Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Bobby. Guys, today we're going to react to Tucker Carlson and how he changed his mind about Islam. But before we jump into the video, guys, as always, if you enjoy my content, leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and check out the links in the description box below to further support my work. And now, with no further ado, let's have a look. Alright, we're going to start with some past footage, to be precise 2017, back in the day, where Tucker Carlson could have been considered an Islamophobe, somebody that was standing against Sharia.
So a lot of Americans are concerned about Sharia law.
Sure.
And they're concerned about polls that show a strikingly large number of Muslims would like to see it supplant civil law in the countries in which they live.
Sharia law is bad, Seth. I don't know if you've heard that. It's bad. It's worse than what's happening in New York and Detroit. It's just bad.
I don't know of a single Gulf country where it's illegal to proselytize on behalf of another religion. I think that in every Muslim majority country in the world, non-Muslims are treated, have fewer rights.
And you can tell when you go to a place like Abu Dhabi or Riyadh, like, oh man, I hope we don't ever wind up with a society like this, with a rape rate of 0, where you leave your keys in your Lamborghini and don't ever worry about it being stolen.
So you often hear people say, well, Sharia is intolerant, women are treated badly, gays are treated badly. Women have, in the Quran, fewer rights than men do.
I'm not Muslim, I'm not for Sharia law. On the other hand, compared to what? Compared to Baltimore?
In England, it's 4 out of 10 British Muslims. In France, 29% of French Muslims would like to see it replace French law.
You know, if people want to get wasted, they do it at home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't.
Boy, I hope we don't wind up with that.
But I've seen a bunch of polls like this that show that the attitudes of faithful Muslims are not Western at all, and that they include a tolerance of violence you don't find among, say, Presbyterians or Jews.
You know, shut up. Sharia law.
Meanwhile, a California imam is apologizing after he referred to Jews as filth.
O Allah, liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the filth of the Jews. O Allah, count them one by one and annihilate them down to the very last one. Do not spare any of them.
Sorry, Sharia law.
Now let's get back even further to 2006.
It's a large number of Muslims around the world who are sympathetic to these acts of craziness. Pew Research poll findings that 1 of every 4 Muslim Americans younger than 30 believe suicide bombing in the defense of Islam is justifiable. For instance, do you believe that Arabs carried out the 9/11 attacks? Only 40% believe Arabs carried them out. Do they think the Jews did it? I get that decent Muslim Americans feel under attack. They feel like they're being unfairly portrayed as terrorists. I understand all that. But at some point, you have to say, this really is a real problem, and it's discrediting all of us, and until we take it seriously, it's going to continue, no? We can debate the details here, but I think it's important to acknowledge a baseline, and that is that there have been an awful lot of attacks where actual people died in the United States and in Europe, committed by people saying really clearly we're acting in the name of Islam. Hasidic Jews, I mean, they're a set-apart community, speak a different language, not assimilated, but I don't see a lot of terror attacks committed by those groups. Often hear Americans say, I have said, including last night, is that assimilation is the problem, is people are not assimilated. And yet you look around, and there are actually a number of groups in our society and yours who aren't assimilated. Hasidic Jews live apart, the Amish live apart. They pose no threat at all to the country they live in. They love the country. Why is this group different? Well, the Muslim population of the West is rising very quickly, and that has implications for social cohesion or national security. So if I say, as Islamic countries do, you don't have a choice, you have to wear hijab. You need to be modest, and if you're not, you could get raped, and if you do, it's your fault. And you have to avert your gaze from men. For example, women are asked to walk behind their husbands, or in some countries are not allowed to drive or vote. Under certain circumstances, can that be empowering? Can female genital mutilation be empowering? That's common in Islamic countries. An Austrian woman was convicted of, quote, disparaging religion. She was fined more than $500. Her crime was suggesting that Muhammad's marriage to a 6-year-old constituted a form of pedophilia. She claimed her comments were protected by the freedom of speech because she is a European, and traditionally they would have been, but things have changed now. So in other words, a standard that has long prevailed in the Islamic world, which is that you can be punished for criticizing Muhammad, is now the law in Europe. Exactly right. The bomber was born in Britain, not some far-off land, but he still grew up to embrace Islamic radicalism and declare war on the country that raised him and kill his neighbors, in effect. There are many more like him. So when you watch the American response, even the cultural response to an event like what happened in your country on Monday, are you surprised by how few of the lessons Americans are learning from this?
Sharia law is bad, Seth. I don't know if you've heard that. It's bad. It's worse than what's happening in New York and Detroit. It's just bad.
It's Tucker
Tucker Carlson at the Real Estate Future Forum 2025.
Let's go.
I've been to Saudi Arabia, and I can't wait to go for a glimpse of what the future holds, because that's what you see when you go to the Gulf.
But because of its scale, its significance in Islam.
He's like, you know what Islam means? Submission. And like, let it hang in the air. Like that was self-evidently disgusting. And I was like, I kind of think submission to God is like the whole point of life. But I didn't say anything. I was like, I don't think I'm against that, actually.
This is an existential threat to the Western way of life.
Exactly right, man.
I really believe that.
Anyone who submits to God, like, I'm just for that.
Yeah, exactly right. And I have to laugh because this is really the conclusion that you come to if you sincerely look into Islam. At first you hear it from the right-wingers or from the Christian apologists. Oh, it means submission. You're a slave. You don't have a relationship with God. Yeah, but the more that you dig, the more it makes sense, of course. What kind of relationship are you seeking with God? Do you want to be buddy-buddy, best friends, BFFs forever? Of course not. God, the creator of all. What other choice do you got other than to submit to that creator? Okay, to be fair, you have two choices. Ultimately, this is the story of Satan, of course. You could rebel against God. But those are the only two modes of operation, basically. Either you submit your will to God, you let go of your ego, you let go of your own desires, and you submit your will to the highest, or you go against it and you rebel. Those are the two modes that you got. And it's quite amazing, especially that he went to the Gulf and that he saw the Muslim world, the Islamic world, and that he describes it as the future. And this is exactly my experience as well. Growing up in the West, hey, it is true. Of course, the West is being flooded by many third world immigrants. It is just factual. Why that happens, if it's good or bad, etc., that is a topic for another day. But the outcome of that mass migration for the common folk in Germany, in France, etc., is not so positive. It can be quite overwhelming, of course. And this is then what you associate with Islam. You take the mainstream media and the migration and personal anecdotes, you mash it all together, and then you say, this is Islam and I hate it. Islam doesn't belong in the West. But when you do your independent research, you read the Quran yourself, you read the Hadith yourself, and hey, maybe visit a Muslim country actually, such as the Emirates, such as Saudi, etc., then you can see how it potentially can look like when Islam is implemented in a modern society. And it's absolutely amazing, as he said already. Look at the crime statistics in the Emirates, in Saudi, and compare that to the West, compare that to Europe. How can you then say, hey, all of this is happening because of Islam in the West, but it's not happening in Saudi, it's not happening in the Emirates? That doesn't make sense, and that opens up the eyes of many, many people, of course. Because admittedly, you could make the case for the wrong people entering the West. Absolutely, you have many criminals entering the West, but look back in the day when a lot of Cubans got over to Miami. Was it due to Christianity that they started selling cocaine in Miami? No, of course not. If you import many, many people, you can import good and evil people, of course. You have to be much more selective, but you cannot blame the theology of Islam. And as I said, if you're sincere like Tucker Carlson here, you will come to the same conclusion, of course. Because if you see how modern Islamic countries are operating, and moreover, you start understanding what Islam truly teaches, what the Sharia truly is, you cannot help but at least sympathize with it, if not adopt it, of course. May Allah guide Tucker Carlson to Islam, I have to say here. He seems to be a truth seeker. But honestly, I challenge everybody to look into Sharia law and tell me what is wrong with it. What exactly is wrong with Sharia law? The enforcement of modesty, the prohibition of drugs and intoxicants, the prohibition of profanity, blasphemy, harsher punishments for stealing, for rape, etc., etc. What is really bad about that? Honestly, look into Sharia law, just like Tucker did, and tell me explicitly with what you disagree, especially if you are a Christian. I really challenge any Christian out there to tell me what is wrong with Sharia law. Any truly Bible-observing Christian will fully agree with Sharia law. Anyways, guys, this is it for today's video. If you liked it, leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out the links in the description box below to further support my work. Check out my new ebook as well, in which I talk about my reversion journey coming from Christianity and accepting Islam in the end, just like Tucker Carlson will as well, inshallah. Alright guys, but this is it. As always, may God bless you all. Much love and peace.
يا نفس إن لم تظفري لا تجزعي